Everyone. My name is Tilda, and today I'm going to speak a little bit about vermi aquaponics, which is a project I've been working with in Zimbabwe for the last year. I work as the head of Project Development Africa for a British charity, and for the last year, I've been working in Zimbabwe, which is a small country just north of South Africa. So it's landlocked, so it doesn't have any ocean around it. So my responsibility is to develop different projects with different local partners to assist them with whatever they think is the most important thing or what is that's hindering them from moving forward and developing and becoming better. And all of those projects are always linked to what is known as the Sustainable Development Goals, which you may have learned about already. So my main focus was to develop projects that was focusing on SDG number 2, which is ending hunger, and SDG number 4, quality education. But as you may know, a lot of the SDGs are connected. So when you work with one, you often assist with another one at the same time. So when I moved down to Zimbabwe, the first thing I needed to do was to do a needs assessment. So that is to ensure that whatever projects that you're developing is focusing on making sure that it's communities that are in charge. They are the ones that are living there. They are the ones who knows what issues they're facing, and they are the ones that should really come up with the solutions, rather than having an outside force coming in and telling them what they should or shouldn't do. So that is what I did. So for my first time in Zimbabwe, I traveled across the entire country out to the most rural schools. Some of them were a couple of hours drive from a main city, and then the schools in themselves were half an hour away from a main road. So that really illustrated how far the students needed to go to be able to come to school. So throughout my travel across the country, I spoke to numerous teachers and principals and the students themselves. And a lot of the issues that they had identified was connected to the lack of water. So in Zimbabwe, they get their water from what is called boreholes, which you see here on the picture on the left. So you pump water from a borehole to be able to access it, and that is and it's not always very reliable, because it can happen that these boreholes, they run out of water, so they don't have any water to pump up. So when I was discussing them, they were clearly indicating the lack of drinking water, and this also resulted in their lack of ability to wash their hands, which now in COVID-19 times we understand and realize how important that is. And they also had issues watering their gardens. So a lot of the gardens was used to actually be able to provide school lunches for the children. But without water, they couldn't water the gardens, and therefore their crop died, and they couldn't provide any food. And without any drinking water, without any food, and without the inability to wash their hands, there was a low incentive to go to school. A lot of the parents and the children, they didn't want to walk the far distance to go to school because they didn't think it was worth it. So if they weren't attending schools, then they didn't have as good results in school. So they may not have passed their exams and so on. And in addition to this, many of them didn't have an electricity at their schools. So that meant that when they needed to get water, they either needed to go and fetch it, as you see at one of the photos there, or they needed to pump it, which is quite a big job. So that was really the core issue, the root cause that we identified when we were working at these schools. So then it was my job to, together with local partners, identify solutions for this, of how can we solve these issues. And what is important when you're trying to find solutions is to make sure that they last. We don't want to simply just go and drop off water at the school, because that water was going to disappear or be used up, and then you were going to be faced with the same issue all over again. So we want to make sure that when we were developing a solution, that it was something that was going to last. And we also wanted to make sure that it was something that was good for the environment and good for the planet, because a lot of the reasons why they were running out of water was due to climate change. Zimbabwe was suffering from severe drought, and that was really the main cause. So together with my colleagues and my partners in Zimbabwe, we found a solution that was called vermi aquaponics. And I had never heard of it before, so it was very new to me, but I soon managed to learn everything I needed to know. But then I had my experts in the team as well, who knew all the fine details about it. So basically what vermi aquaponics is it's a system, as you see here on the left. It's a connection of different parts that come together to grow vegetables and to grow fish. So what happens is that you can see in these two other photos as well. I'll see if I can. You see these plastic water pipes, and you see this little stone garden or floating garden. So these are really so these are where actually the vegetables themselves grow. But the issue is, when you normally grow vegetables, you grow them in the soil. So that means that the soil in itself needs to be in a certain way. And if you put fertilizers on it, you can ruin the soil. And when you water it, the water goes down to the earth, into the soil. So you can't reuse the water. However, what they had found is, if you grow your vegetables in these systems that you see, the white pipes or the stone blocks, then you could reuse the same water again. So the water was traveling from a fish pond, as you see on the left. The water there was pumped through the fish pond up to the pipes, and then back to the fish pond, and from the fish pond up to the floating vegetable gardens. So that meant that the water that they were using, they could be recycled. And that way you were saving the water that you would have from the pump, so that the students could drink their water, and that they could use it to wash their hands. And therefore they were both being able to produce food for the school and save water at the same time. And what made this system so incredible was that not only can you now grow vegetables, but you can also grow fish, because within the pond you actually harvest fish. So that meant that they could also that get more produce from this project. And at the same time, when the water was pumped from the fish pond into the gardens, I already mentioned how they were recycling the water. But because the fish was living in the water was actually very nutritious, so that the vegetables actually grew 3 times as fast. So you can imagine, if you used to have a garden which was sucking up all of your water, you didn't get as much produce from it, and it was ruining in their soil. It was a big issue. But now, through this system, they could fix a lot of these issues. So yeah, as I mentioned, the system uses less water. The water could be safe for drinking and washing hands. You could grow both fish and vegetables quicker. You don't contaminate or ruin the soil. So you don't contribute to climate change. And at the same time, because the system was placed at the school, the children that were studying agriculture, they could actually use the system as a practical way of learning. So that was also very important for us, because this way they could actually go home and they could do this themselves in their own gardens. And at the same time, rather than eating these vegetables and this fish, they could actually sell the produce for a lot of money. And then the money that they earned, they could buy all the things that they wanted. They could buy perhaps other foods to feed their students, or maybe the school needed a new computer lab, or they wanted to buy new books. Then by selling the produce, they could actually make more money. And by doing that, it meant that they didn't need to rely on anyone else to come and help them. They could become self-sufficient and independent. And as I said, that's very important when you build a project, because you want to make sure that they continue on and that it's not just simply solving an issue right now, but rather solving an issue that is ongoing. And as we know, climate change is just getting worse as it is now. So to find a solution to save the water was really, really important. And this system did it all. So in March this year, we installed this system, as you saw in my previous image here on the screen. And we are now waiting for the crop to start growing, so that they can start selling the produce. But so we are very eager to see how it all turns out, which I'm sure is going to be very, very interesting. But yes, that's all from me. Hopefully you learned something and that you'll be able to assist us in this process of marketing this incredible product and this project, so that we can deliver more systems to more schools. Thank you so much for listening.